Hey everybody, welcome back to the Lawyer Forward podcast. I'm Mike Whalen. This week we are doing a special series to commemorate the launch of our new ebook entitled Lawyers Don't Care About Your Chatbot, a Pragmatist Guide to Legaltech Marketing in the Age of Zero Click. Go to lawyersdon'tcare.com and download your copy of the ebook. And also stay tuned this week for conversations like I'm about to have with my good friend John Grant. John, how are you today, sir?
I am good. Yeah, we have very mild weather here in the Pacific Northwest relative to the sweltering that is going on
I hate
in
you.
your
I'm
place.
going to
Sorry.
die.
Yeah.
Yeah. My plants and chickens and they are all angry. They're all looking at me panting and expectantly, and I'm like, dude, I got nothing. John, I brought you here not because of your knowledge of chicken panting and egg production as impacted by heat indexes, but because how to put this politely? That sounded rude. Not impolite about you. I think a lot of the people who start and run legal tech companies either never practiced, ironically, or just don't have much connection to what it's like. And that's not very uncommon. A lot of builders will go out and solve for problems without having lots of ways to get the feedback. I think marketing is a way to get that feedback. But I brought you here to talk about the state of the practice, basically. How are lawyers practicing? To get to that, John, tell us about you. What is it that you do that made me think, John knows what's up?
Yeah. Yeah, I've got a lot of hats as usual, but I currently my primary hat is as the owner and chief cook and bottle washer for Agile Attorney Consulting, which has existed for over a decade now. And is the vehicle through which I work with law firms and legal teams to improve their practice operations. And that is a very broad set of things. Primarily, I tend to think of things in three high-level buckets in terms of practice operations. There's the sales and marketing or the getting the work pipeline or bucket. There is the getting paid bucket at the other end of the system. I'm very squarely between those two things in the delivering the work pipeline or bucket. So I help lawyers get work done through their practice in a smoother and more predictable way. Ultimately, that usually leads to a faster way and a more profitable way. But we don't always start there. We almost always get there, but we don't always start there.
Boy, that's interesting because it ties into what I want to talk to you about. And here's how. I probably have told you this story before. I remember talking to a legal tech builder. He was a co-founder. He was the technical side of the company, and we were talking about bleeding neck problems. There's this phrase in marketing, the idea that you want to identify the thing that people are like, holy cow, I got to fix this. And
Yeah.
if you can do that, then
Right.
and he asked me, okay, well, what are the bleeding neck problems for lawyers? And I said, lawyers are willing to pay for three things. They want to bill more, they want to collect more, and they want to not get sued. And he was so offended by that framing. And I think most lawyers, including me when I practiced, if somebody said that was true of me, I'd say, how dare you? I'm here for the, spirit and the good vibes and social something. But when you
Yeah.
go out and you are dealing with lawyers, you have to
hmm
get into the dirt and really answer the questions and solve the problems that they care about. When you are speaking to lawyers, what are the threads that you're pulling to try to get their attention, and what are they asking you for?
I think so much of legal marketing, legal tech marketing, legal marketing is focused on messages of more. And that might be a message of get more clients in the case of, or get more leads, which maybe leads to more clients, but we'll see, right? That's part of the operations part. But get more leads, get more clients, get more work done, right? Or do more with less type things. But the messaging is all more. And my feeling and experience, right? I mean, I've been doing this for over a decade now, is that there are a lot of things out there that lawyers would like less of. Now, you do see some existing marketing that is do less, right? And you've seen it forever, but you see it now again in the realm of AI and generative AI and all this stuff, right? Which is take the administrative things off of your plate, do less of those, and then do more of the billing work. But that do less message is always tied back into a do more something, right? And it's the things you mentioned, right? It's make more money, stuff like that, right? I guess get sued less is probably, or have less trouble with ethics or stuff like that is part of it. But my experience is that most lawyers have more than enough on their plates already, and they have more work in their delivery pipeline than they know what to do with, and then they can reasonably deliver with the resources and the capacity that they have. And so I spend a lot of my time, and sorry to those of you who are legal marketing marketers or lead marketers or intake marketers, but I tell people that they are dramatically overinvested in marketing, sales, and intake in most practice areas, right? There's always differences, but for the most part, in most geographies, in most practice areas, in most parts of the world, there is a bigger supply of legal problems than there is a supply of legal solution makers. And so I try to get people to do fewer things at once as a tool for getting more things overall done.
And yet,
yeah.
we've arrived at the part of the show where I tell you to tell me how smart I am. As you well know, because I'm sure it's the wallpaper in your bathroom, I wrote a book some number of years ago about, among other things, this conflict that lawyers feel at the expectations that are put on them to be both expert and to be accessible. And I tell this story all the time. I'm sure you were there that year too at the Clio Cloud Conference, and they were talking about utilization rates, which the way they measure utilization rates and the concept, it like drives me crazy. But basically, what it was arguing was, hey, these lawyers are only billing 2 to 3 hours a day. They should be doing a whole bunch more of that expert work. And what was interesting at that conference was I went to one session that said, people want to be able to talk to you by text messages. You should be available by text messages. You should be interrupted all the time. And that was going to answer we need more clients, right? And then on the other side, I went to another session right after that literally said, you need to be basically in the basement reading books, not responding to all these things because your job is to get it right. There's a conflict among lawyers in 2025, and it's been true for a while. It drives me crazy that they're expected to be both accessible and expert. This is the conflict that I think is driving a lot of what you're seeing. Tell me how that plays out in the way these lawyers come to you for improvements in their practice.
Yeah. So, and I'll answer the question you asked a minute ago better, and then I'll answer the question you just asked. But you asked about the drivers. So the things I hear all the time when lawyers come to me, and sometimes the lawyers that come to me are the owners of law practices. Sometimes the lawyers that come to me are members of the team that say, hey, there's something that's going wrong here and we need help. And like, I want to talk to you as a way of like getting you in here. But the problems they're experiencing are pretty consistent. Number one, and these are phrases I hear all the time, I'm worried something's going to fall through the cracks, right? So whatever metaphor you want to use, I'm spinning plates. I'm worried one of them is going to come crashing down, but I have too many things to keep track of and I can't possibly keep track of them all. So I need help with that. Number two is I feel like I'm on the hamster wheel, the rat race, the treadmill, whatever it happens to be, right? But the churn,
as it was referred to in lawyer form.
Yeah, that metaphor that I am working really hard here, but I'm not making progress, right? So I'm busy, but I'm not productive. That's number two. Number three is I feel like I spend all of my time fighting fires and I never have time to do fire prevention. Right. So I am constantly jumping from emergency to urgent issue after urgent issue, and puts me in a place where I never get to do if we're using the Eisenhower matrix, right? The work that is important but not urgent, as opposed to the work that is urgent but not important, or urgent, giving off urgency signals is what I sometimes say.
When you're doing process improvement in these law firms, I assume you're going in and you're talking to them about tools, because everybody thinks that a tool and a solution are the same thing. And I wonder if what you're seeing surface in these conversations actually relieve that sense of overwhelm. Like, how resistant or accepting are lawyers of the idea that this tool implementation, this process implementation, whatever it is, this is not a distraction. This is literally the work. How resistant are they to those kinds of improvements?
A few things that come to mind in light of that question, which is a different way of saying I'm about to answer your question. One is that, tools feel magical to people, right? We know that. So when people experience these problems, the first reaction they have is to often go look for a tool. And they're highly susceptible to marketing messages, which is why we all do it, right? I mean, they are useful messages. When people are experiencing pain, they want an immediate solution to their pain. And frankly, part of my problem as a consultant is that I'm kind of selling a, hey, you should go for more walks and eat more vegetables line of thinking, as opposed to a magic shot that comes through the mail. I used to get to say magic pill, but now we actually have a magic shot. So, the world's evolving. So people are looking for a solution, but I also think that they're looking for someone to sort of acknowledge that their pain is real, that their feelings are real.
Sure.
And so when I get on the phone or a Zoom call or whatever with people, they often, just because I tend to be able to reflect number one, reflect their problem back to them, right? And their feelings back to them. Number two, because I've heard this from so many different lawyers and so many different law firms, I can often give language to the thing they're feeling that they haven't quite thought of the language yet. And so they find that very comforting, which again, it's a form of marketing, right? I'm giving voice to the problem that they feel but can't express. Now, again, in terms of solutions, and I guess I'll go all the way around back to my intro since I'm going backwards. The other thing that I am now is the CEO of a very fledgling legal tech company, which is called greenline.legal. And we have a landing page and not much else yet. We've got a product that's in development, but I'm working with a couple of co-founders on a tool that supports the methodology and the practices and the systems that I've been teaching for over a decade. Hoping, basically like any founder, right? It's the tool that I wish existed in the world. And I'm finally working with some folks to make that so. All of which is a long way of saying I'm about to have to shift my mindset from being a, move your body more and eat your vegetables type person to, hey, this tool actually might help solve your problem. And I think will help solve your problem. But it's a different mindset to be a product marketer versus a services marketer.
Well, and let me diagnose you a little bit. So
Sure.
you and I had a conversation. So there's a study, and I'm going to say this for the folks at home because you know this already. There's a study that changed my brain about lawyers. It's from Lawrence Krieger. It's over a decade ago now. It's called What Makes Lawyers Happy. And the short version, I encourage everybody who sells to lawyers especially to go read it. But the short version is that what makes lawyers happy is the same stuff that makes everybody else happy. What's weird about lawyers is when we go to law school, we completely switch our priorities to all those things that don't make us happy. And
yes,
why I find especially your shift from being inside these practices doing services to having to, hey, I can improve your life, sell them, is which lever do you pull on? Do you pull on the change that they want or on the change that they need? How do you think about communicating now that you know the way lawyers operate in their brain in this way?
Yeah, I don't have an answer, right? I've been giving it a lot of thought, and I know that the way to ultimately connect with someone is to connect with the things that makes lawyers happy. Right? Or that make lawyer happy. There are those things. How to connect with them is a different problem than how to get their attention. And so at different phases, in your funnel, in the pipeline, whatever, right? If we're trying to attract somebody's attention, then my current thinking, right? And I don't have great data to prove this yet, is that the more messages work, right? The hustle messages, the more messages, not because they are, well, maybe because they are inherently successful, right? I mean, it's kind of the same strategy as putting beautiful people in your advertisements, right? They catch people's attention, and they're just certain things that the human brain seems to be wired to pay attention to. And if you're going to capture that attention, it really, really helps if you use one of those things. Now, once you have their attention, then you have to actually speak to a genuine problem that they have. And the genuine problem that they have in the era of Instagram and the internet probably isn't that there aren't enough pretty people to look at, right? They can find those lots of places. So you have to actually connect with some substance pretty quickly, hopefully. And again, I think that the Krieger article is amazing, and it It is similar in findings to things that came out of the book Drive by Daniel Pink, which was, which was his book, but was an assemblage of research done by a bunch of other very smart people, all of which is people are typically driven by intrinsic motivators more reliably than they are extrinsic motivators. And extrinsic motivators like, I'm going to get you more money, I'm going to get you more power, prestige, whatever. Like, yes, we like that, but ultimately we want to connect with something that's meaningful. We want to do good work. We want to have a certain amount of autonomy. And I say we both as people and as a lawyer, right? Because I did have my own law practice for almost a decade too before I switched into this consulting role.
Let me posit a theory and you tell me where it's wrong. One of the core things that I talk about in this book, Lawyers Don't Care About Your Chatbot, is that in the diffusion of innovation research, in social structure, there are different people who behave different ways. They fill different functions in terms of getting more people to sign up. And if you're going to start a business that you need to scale, you have to hit this sort of main market, this major market that doesn't care. They're not sitting around waiting for you to they don't know how to diagnose what their problem is. They're the kinds of people that are just like, I don't know, show me how to make more money, show me how to collect more, show me how to not get in trouble. Like, I'm barely treading water here. These are not that kind of, these are pragmatists, right? Like these are pragmatists and conservatives, and they need to be persuaded. The other type of people that really do drive change, and that I think legal tech companies are generally pretty good at getting to, are the missionaries, are the early adopters, are the people who really do care about the deep stuff. So in that What Makes Lawyers Happy, you see that what they seek are status symbols, money, class rank, partner status. That's what lawyers say they want. But what actually fulfills them is relatedness, feelings of autonomy, and competence, feelings of that, like, you're good at what you do. And so to a degree, I feel like the way I'm going to pull those two different social functions, the missionaries who are going to go persuade and the congregation who's ready to be persuaded, is different. And I might speak to the congregation about, get more work and bill more and get more done and even spend time with the kids and get away and leave. Where those other people, I might talk more about mission. I might talk more about what you're trying to accomplish with your company. So anyway, that's a long way for me to say, I think maybe the answer to there being this dichotomy is communicating via a dichotomy. Talk about both.
I think that's right. I mean, I think, there are different sort of archetypes of folks out in the world. And, I guess to get further caveats about me, right, I have decided intentionally to focus my consulting practice primarily on sort of smallish law practices. So bigger than true solos, but I don't have any firms that I've worked with that are more than I don't have any current firms that I'm working with that are more than about 25 people total. Mostly I'm working with folks that are in sort of the maybe 5 to 15 person range. And that can be any number of lawyers and staff and other folks, depending on situations. I think the drivers there are different than, quote unquote, big law. And even, big law is got its own striations and whatever else. But the cultures in different law practices are different. And the cultures, even in different practice areas, are different. And I do think maybe one risk that legal marketers have is treating lawyers as a monolith and not really getting more granular and doing the, whatever, the ICPs and the, personas and all the tools of the trade, but really understanding, okay, what are the drivers behind an estate planning practice and how do they differ from the drivers behind a criminal defense practice or an immigration practice or a small business practice? Because really you're dealing with people that, owners of these practices, of these businesses, and also the workers inside of them that are motivated and driven by different things. And so it's helpful to get granular. And, one of the advantages I have is that I've worked with a lot of different types of law practices over the years, and I've worked with multiples of a lot of different practice types. And so I feel like I've started to get a better sense of, great, this person does consumer rights law. I understand what makes consumer rights lawyers tick in a way that's different from the things that make a family law lawyer tick.
Yeah. Well, and even in that, like people aren't monoliths. There's I'm going to get really nerdy now, the Harold Bloom's, the literary critic's old book. It's called Shakespeare, The Invention of the Human. And basically his argument is before Hamlet and Falstaff, the mad character did mad things, and the smart character did smart things, and the strong character did strong things. And what Hamlet and Falstaff did in literature was showed, people are freaking weird. People just make different decisions. They have different motivations at different times. You got to hit them in these moments. And so when you're communicating, the fact that sometimes you're going to have to pull on their money-making need and not offend by saying, hey, jerk, why don't you care about the baby puppies or whatever, whatever it is that motivates lawyers
absolutely.
Versus the other side. You got to communicate in so many different ways.
Right. No, I think that's right. And one of the ways that I genericize that a little bit, and again, my personal challenge, and here I'm saying it to the world, is in my consulting practice, I can be really clear that what I promise to do is help people reclaim their already finite capacity, right? And my general sort of premise as a consultant is you have finite capacity, you have too many different things that you've committed that capacity to. You need to be more discerning with your commitment so that you can better prioritize how you apply that finite capacity to things that are going to be meaningful to you. And what I kind of leave unspoken, and I will figure this out over the course of a consulting relationship, is, okay, if I can free up some of your capacity, how do you want to use it? And I have some clients that want to use it by doing more legal work, right? They want to make more money. They want to have more clients. They want to put more money in the bank, support their, 529 plans for their kids, go on fancy vacations, et cetera. And like, I am in no position, I try not to yuck someone else's yum, right? So if that's what they want to do with their capacity, they get to do that with their capacity. Now, I personally have sort of an access to justice bent. I've got a lot of things. So, I tend to work well with lawyers and law firms that want to maybe use some of that capacity to offer a lower price point legal service, or maybe do a little low bono or volunteer work or whatever it might be. But by no means do I filter for that. And I'm not going to judge people too much, maybe a little bit, but
yeah. Just to my wife when I go home.
Yeah, right. No, again, people get to make more of the capacity. And so I think that slightly generic message of we are going to build or reclaim or otherwise help you make better use of the capacity that you have, that works reasonably well for me in a consulting practice. I've sort of yet to figure out how that's going to play in a legal tech product marketing.
Well, because as you said,
space.
You're a consultant, which means by definition, you get to do the consultative sale. You get to tell the story.
Right.
You get to persuade.
Absolutely.
You get to, and you get to reinforce that story every time you talk to them, which is much harder with a technology company. But again, that may be what we call content. There may be product aligned content that keeps reinforcing, and you make sure when you develop the product, it's reinforcing that message.
I think that's right. Because the other thing I get to see as a consultant is the tangible progress, right? And, the fact that I've had some clients for almost the entirety of the 10 years that I've been doing this is an indication that I'm doing something well for you, right? I'm doing something meaningful for them. I'm helping them. And, we're obviously not still solving the same problems today that we were solving 10 years ago. We've made progress. We continue to make progress. And, ultimately I'm helping people feel better about their law practices, right? And that's what it comes back to, right? They feel like they're making progress. They feel like they're doing good work. They feel like they're becoming more expert, right? When you have that feeling that I'm running on the treadmill, right? You don't feel like an expert. You don't feel like you have autonomy.
Right.
When you have that feeling that something is going to fall through the cracks, you don't feel like an expert. You feel like a schmo. Right? It's like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to be better than this. This is like the floor of my professional responsibility is to not drop balls for clients. And I feel like I'm doing it. So
yeah. So why didn't I know that already? Well, because you're running like a crazy person. Why is my client unhappy with me? Well, because you're running like a crazy person. Those needs to be both accessible and expert are impossible to do together.
Yeah.
Speaking of, while I have you, our last thing, I wanted to talk to you about product development to solve problems, because you are
Mm,
developing a product to solve a problem. And you know better than I do, every time you bring in a lawyer and you're trying to do these sort of process optimizations and you're doing this change
yeah.
management and you need them to adopt it. I remember when I got Clio a long time ago, like early days. And Clio at the time was basically just like file
Yeah.
management with the
Time and
ability to
billing.
assign a client to it. It wasn't, yeah, in some billing, it wasn't much. And what drove me crazy about it was it didn't have workflow. In my brain,
Mm,
because, I was in logistics before I went to law school, my brain thinks in workflows and like supply
yes.
chain and getting things done. And so, bit of news today, Harvey released that they have an agentic, they're calling it agentic, workflow builder. The idea, I guess, is you talk to it about all the things that you do in your firm, and then it goes and it puts it into all these processes. I'm a little concerned about garbage in, garbage out, and if it is indeed agentic and is able to say, nope, what you should be doing is such and such. But in your mind, as you see these tools sort of developing, these solutions developing, do you think that they're going to meet what it is that lawyers need? And if they are, will they be able to communicate it in a way that actually gets the adoption done?
I think that selling magic wands is easy. I think they're selling a magic wand. I have not seen that press release, so I can't comment on any specifics. I think you're completely right to have concerns about garbage in, garbage out, and that's very much my experience as a consultant. Also, I think that just like there's a difference in legal marketing between what lawyers say they want and what they genuinely want, or what genuinely makes them happy, there are differences in legal process and legal operations and legal services delivery between what lawyers say they do and what they actually do. And so I think to the extent that you have um, an AI that is able to watch your behaviors
Mm.
and observe how you're doing things and can then learn from the actual work. But if you think that you've got a written policy or procedure that you're going to then hand over to an AI and it's going to automate the way that you do that, I mean, it's the age old problem with all automation, which is automation will do whatever you tell it to do. And this is still true with agentic AI too, right? So if you haven't really thought through the system, if you haven't really battle tested the system, then you'll just make copies of the same flaw faster.
Right. And some of it reminds me of like writing a book. Sometimes you write a book, even though writing a book is hard because it's hard, right? There's
Yeah,
something about the process of writing a book that makes you think differently. It makes you more systematic in your thinking. You've got to defend things. And I
abs-
think to totally sell John Grant's consulting to law firms, there's something about going through the process, because all these tools that capture what you do in the wild, I guarantee you what you're going to get on the other side of that is you saying, holy crap, is that really what I do? I had no idea that
yeah. Oh, for sure.
this is
Yes.
what I do. So there's something about the process of having to go through and fix these processes that changes your brain, makes you do the hard work, and it's positive. But selling that, whew, whew.
Yeah, to do it again, not to like pitch my own services, but I've been under the hood of a lot of friggin' law practices at this
Yeah, yeah.
point. Like I have worked with a lot of teams, a lot of workflows, a lot of systems. I have seen what lawyers think will work, and I can steer them away from that. Right. And maybe someday Harvey's going to do that. Right. I mean, I'm not like an AI pessimist, whatever, but I am a pragmatist. And I think that agentic AI in particular has a lot of promise and a lot of potential, but it's not there yet. And again, who knows what yet is in the modern era, right?
Well, and then
It could
as
be
long
there.
as there are people involved, which lawyers are people. So if you're going to lawyers, you're dealing with people. You are building solutions that combine all of your best intentions as a builder and all of their best abilities as an attorney, and that's complex. Well, John, I appreciate the perspective, both inside the law firms and also you on the outside, thinking about how to communicate to lawyers, to sell to them, to drive change, and to just improve the practice. I think we all want to do that while not starving and dying. So thank you for that perspective, John. For people who want to learn more about you, to connect with you, whether for the technology company or for your consulting services, what's the best way to reach out?
Yeah, agileattorney.com. If you Google Agile Attorney or search for Agile Attorney in whatever system, you will come across my website, my podcast, my LinkedIn profile, whatever. And happy to chat about all these things. And, excited to sort of have this new chapter of trying a legal tech thing too.
Perfect. I'm excited to see it. And we'll make sure all that stuff to get in touch with you is in the show notes for anyone who's watching, listening. If you want your copy of Lawyers Don't Care About Your Chatbot, go to lawyersdon'tcare.com and download your free copy. And we'll see you guys in the next episode. Thanks, John.
Yep. Thanks, Mike.